All right, we are live. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I am your host, Ed Rabyd, former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to the live stream. Welcome to Rabyd Reflections for October 5th, 2024. Today is the agenda is the main question is respectful theist-atheist exchange still possible? That's a very interesting question. It's actually predicated by another question that I got this week that I thought was germane to it. So we'll see about that. I also want to ask the question because I'm doing my own research into this topic for a video I want to do, which is, do atheists still have some practices that could be considered religious? And then the third thing on my agenda is this discussion of whether God is responsible for moral evil. And I want to look at Colossians 1:16 and 17 for that, because of some previous discussion on another verse. Hey, Martin. Also, take a quick look at the presidential race, how things are going for both candidates, and also deal with some other comments, including a couple that I got today. I knew, just as an opening, I knew as soon as I said I was going to do a series on Frank Turek's book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, that I was going to get the theist and the atheist to come out. And boy, has that turned out to be true. The comments are gold from both sides. It's been great. But I want to get back to our original question: is respectful theist-atheist exchange still possible? And this is predicated by a question. Martin, you're here. I think this is your question about how you're dealing with somebody that's a family or a loved one, and you're interacting with them. They're a theist, you're an atheist, and you're trying to have a respectful exchange. But, I guess the question would be, what makes that exchange difficult? What makes it hard to overcome those barriers? Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. Respecting the freedom of religion. I respect the freedom of religion for the same reason that I want respect for having no religion. It's the age-old statement. I think the Freedom from Religion Foundation uses this one a lot, that your freedom of religion depends on your freedom from religion. And what they mean by that is a Christian has the right to not be a Muslim. A Muslim has a right not to be a Christian. Okay. And the atheist, the secularist, is simply saying, I have a right to be none of the above. Okay. Your ability to have a free flow of religion is predicated on the idea that you're free to not choose a certain belief, that you're free not to believe certain things. If you are you're a Hindu, you have the right not to have Christianity and other religions forced down your throat. It is hard to respect that, except I respect it because the whole idea of freedom of religion depends on the ability to not only freely express a religion, but also not be forced into a certain religion. And I think that's what we're talking about when we have these exchanges. Most of the time, on a personal level, it's more about what you believe and what you don't. And having respect for people who have religious faith is, yeah. And Paul just brought up a good thing in the comments, is if you have not been brought up in religion, when you hear religious people espouse their beliefs, you're just kind of, well, boy, that's nonsense. Why would you ever believe that? Now, I come at it from a different perspective because I used to be a Christian. I was a Christian for 40 years, and I was a pastor in that religion for 20, roughly. Those are rough numbers, but I guess I can understand how somebody can be emotionally attracted to a religion and stay in it because of emotional reasons. For me, it was the death of my father that kind of kept me in for a decade at least, with this desire to see my dad again. Yeah, Rimmers brings up the point. It's the right not to be forced to be a religion that you would not choose. Okay, And so when you come at it from that point of view, I can have a respectful exchange with a theist if they're also respecting the fact that I have the right not to believe what they believe, that I can't be forced to believe what they believe. Okay. And as long as that's the groundwork, then I don't have a problem with that. Usually what happens, and I think the real problem that's cropped up is the newer crop and the younger crop of apologists seem to think that disrespecting atheists, for instance, is the way to go as far as their tactics. And that's where usually there's a lot of anger directed towards me as a former theist. I get it all the time. So yeah, yeah, I think what we have, the real problem, it's there's a there's this force right now in apologetics that just wants to presuppose certain things. And respect, as you point out, Martin, is something that is earned. And but at the same time, there's a certain level of respect that I give all human beings that sometimes it's like the moment I became an atheist, I seem to stop being human in some way to them. And I think that's a danger for any ideology. I see atheists who do that. Um, you'll respect me in the morning. Okay. All right, Fred. I love you guys, but you're awesome. Um, it's See, because I have that desire for a respectful exchange on any idea. And, for me, free speech isn't just, um, a nice little discussion to have. It's something to fight for. The same is true for, this question of whether or not I could engage a theist. You have to respect that they're alive. You have to respect that they're a human being. I think human basic respect is actually the real basis for most moral systems. I would say that that is true. Um, this idea of what it means to respect people's rights, their human rights, and I think part of the human right is you get to believe what you want to. And if I don't, if I choose not to believe, or I just am in a situation where I just don't find the evidence convincing for any God, then I think that that's something that has to be respected. Now, the problem with religion is it adds a whole bunch of things. And I'm speaking particularly of Christian religion because you have one of the things that I think is inherently disrespectful sometimes is some of the beliefs about people who don't believe. Okay. I think with Christianity, a lot of that is fostered by, of course, Romans 1:18 through like 23, where Paul basically says that, people who say they don't believe actually do, they just want to sin, kind of thing. And that, of course, leads to the whole you atheists don't have morality, which is a very insulting thing to say to anybody. If you walked up to a Buddhist and said you had no morality simply because you're a Buddhist and I'm a Christian, that would be considered disrespectful in any context. And, you know, you may disagree with my moral foundations, but it's not that I don't have any. Okay. To me, I think humanity, from a moral standpoint, we create moral systems because we have to interact with each other. I think it's a natural outgrowth of being human and being a social species. We have to create these rules. So there's that element of it. On a personal level, when you're dealing with people that you love and care for, that's a different matter. I know for me, my mother is still a theist very much. I don't suspect that she's ever going to stop. Um, so what am I going to do? Because I still love my mom, right? Well, I'm going to respect that she believes as long as she respects that I don't. Okay, and so far so good. Okay, part of it is it doesn't come up very often. There's certain conversations that just get tabled to maintain the relationship, but that happens in a lot of things, not just religion. I don't want to hurt people. Okay, as an atheist, I'm far much more conscious as a humanist of not wanting to hurt other people and not necessarily hurt their feelings because the truth isn't always respectful of people's feelings. but I don't want to go out and deliberately cause drama because of it. If drama comes about because of it, that's fine. That's just life. It could be something else, like, how we, cooked a Christmas turkey, but, there could be drama about that for all I know. But that's kind of, you have to ask that question. I've said this before. You have to ask the question, what's the most important thing to you, the relationship with your family or being right? And I don't think that being right is necessarily always what it's cracked up to be sometimes. Yeah, you can be right about this. I think I'm very right about the atheist position. I think there is no good evidence to believe in any God, and there's a lot of good alternative explanations now to a God and to a deity, so that I'm not, I it's not just that I'm not convinced by the evidence, it's just there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. And there's a lot of good arguments against a God. From the problem of evil all the way down to, Occam's razor, to whatever different way you want to go with it. So I don't know if respectful exchange is possible. It really depends on who you're dealing with. I do not think respectful exchange is possible with certain apologists that follow a certain school's apologetics. I think I have yet to see an exchange between an atheist and a pre-supper go well, as far as being respectful. Okay, sooner or later, um, somebody degenerates into name calling. Somebody degenerates into this. Yes, it's really live shards. So I do one live broadcast on Saturday at 6. It's the one I do. I've only been doing it about a month. So I don't know. Every time I watch, like, some sort of pre-supper go up against an atheist, it always degenerates into this. I presuppose certain things, and so therefore you can't get me all of that. As a zombie, don't you know? Yeah, I don't come out of my closet very often. I'm a vampire. I work at night. I'm a third shifter, and I like it. Actually, to be honest, I prefer being up all night. So, so there's that. So yeah, there's that aspect of it. Uh, it's it's more of you know, it's why I don't debate, because I don't know if respectful debate is possible. I am thinking about getting StreamYard and allowing people in, but it's more of a, I don't want to carry the conversation the entire hour and a half that I'm on. And it's yeah, discussions are better. I think when you look at old time debates, like when Christopher Hitchens and some of the people he went up against debated, it wasn't just that it was moderated, but there was also these discussion points afterwards where they have this, so there's that aspect of it. But I know what the Bible says that Christians are supposed to do when they're presenting the gospel. I think, because it says, be respectful, and so, and I don't have a problem with theists that respect my right to not believe. I don't have a problem with theists who want to go their merry way, and we can have a discussion on why their belief is irrational, at least from my perspective, and why they think their belief is rational from their perspective. Now, it's not just sugar snakes. It's there's the tenor you get about how Christians are ordered to live their life based on Paul's admonitions, or pseudo Paul, or whoever is writing, is to be gentle about it, to be respectful to the person. And, one of the most violated things I see on the internet with some of these new pre-suppers is they absolutely violate Jesus's teaching on the Sermon on the Mount of not calling somebody a fool or that, because you'll be in danger of hellfire. They ignore that verse all the time. And I think respectful exchange would be possible if, part of the problem that, like, lifelong atheists, people who have never been a believer, have a problem respecting religious beliefs because they think it's all nonsense. And so that kicks in, that natural human inclination kicks in. And then on the other side, I think you have a group of people that likes to ignore certain scriptures about how they're supposed to. It is disrespectful to call somebody a fool. And the Bible makes it very clear. Jesus makes it clear that if you do that, then you're in danger of judgment yourself by God. And it's one of the most when I see presuppers in position in particular, presuppositionalist apologists tend to have this tendency to go right to name calling. Okay, or they rage quit and then they'll deny it, or it's a real bad problem with them. And as an atheist, I could countermand them on that, and but they're not going to listen to me necessarily. What a lot of them, I think, need is somebody to sit down with them and say, sit down and say, hey, this is not the proper way to do this. You're not going to win anybody over with this attitude. It kind of because I try to get after my side too, because it kind of leads into my second question of the day, which is, do we atheists still have some things that could be considered religious? And I'm kind of working on a video on this because I think it's something that needs to be talked about. Because when I'm putting religious in quotes, I guess, a little bit. So I don't know it, because on the theist side, the problem with respectful exchange is usually they have these presuppositions about atheists. They really do believe. Okay, they're just denying it because they want to sin is one of those presupposed beliefs. And if they come at you with that, then I'm like, no, none of that's true. I now have the defense whenever somebody goes like, well, actually, that's one of my many proofs that the Bible is wrong and thus not the Word of God, is because I know Paul is wrong. Okay, I know up here Paul is wrong. I don't have that. I don't believe, and it's why when I pulled out Frank Turek, I'm like, this is the whole tenor of his book. Here is, I'm somewhat like him. Do I have religious practices that would lead people to think that I still have faith, that I still have a religion, that atheism is a religion? And, what are some of those habits that could still, yeah, I mean, we can, Fred makes a good point. We still are capable of being human being and being stubborn and obtuse. And, but we acknowledge that's just simply because we're human. Okay. Human beings are that way. But what is the other thing that theists tend to make problematic for atheists is, and I think this was on Durante Lamar, he did a short with a lady talking about how the hardest thing for her being a Christian was being better than everybody else. And there is an attitude in theism that says, I have the right belief. Okay. Now, some of them are very humble about it and say, well, I might be wrong, might be right. But many are like, I have the truth, and so I know better than you. Okay, it's the I know better than you attitude that sometimes a theist will bring to a discussion, and I try to avoid that as an atheist. Yeah, it's not only a religion, Paul. There's a lot of things that we believe without evidence, and we have to in a lot of respect, because life comes at you so fast. You sometimes have to go on your gut. And the problem with intuition, as I've said many times before, is it's often a very bad way to make decisions. But sometimes you have to go with it because it's what you got. And so, do we do things that are considered religious? And yeah, it's I we when you really look at religious belief, one of my criticisms as an atheist is the tribal categorization of it. Like, we are the chosen people, we are the people that have the truth, we have the gospel and you don't. Even the expression, because I reacted to I am beggar and I know where that expression comes from, is that the difference between the Christian and the non-Christian is the Christian is a beggar that knows how to find bread. So that's where he got his name from, I think. I'm not sure for sure, but I suspect. And so, but even that is, I'm the beggar that knows where the bread is and you don't. Okay. And there's this, I know something you don't know to faith that makes me better than you. That's kind of inherent to theism. And that comes out every once in a while, and it can rub an atheist the wrong way. And I think atheists need to kind of like, okay, this is just the nature of the beast, instead of saying they're being intentional about it. Every once in a while, I'll hear an atheist attack something that apologists or theists do. I say, well, that's kind of inherent to the beast. It's not really, I don't know if they're being deliberately obtuse or ignorant so much as that's just kind of the way it is. And so you have to be careful with that as an atheist on your side. But we atheists tend to be tribal too. One of my great complaints, and one of the things that got me going down the path of our atheists still doing stuff that would be considered religious, one of those things is tribalism, because I'm a libertarian atheist. I know conservative atheists. I know liberal atheists. I know anarchical atheists. I, the political social spectrums on issues are all over the place, okay, because we openly say it, that atheism is only about the God claim and about nothing else. But then a lot of atheists try to make it about something else, okay, like, oh, if you're an atheist, you have to be a liberal, or you have to be a Democrat, or you have to be, Labor Party, or whatever, depending on where you're at, whatever liberal obfuscation, that somehow, even though we got out of the tribalism of religion, we're still supposed to engage in some form of tribalism. And is that a religious practice, or is that just the nature of humanity? So that's that aspect. I think in some atheist contexts, I've seen people who hold certain social views get shunned. I would say that atheists, certain political social views do shun people. They'll yell about how Christians shun people and how that's not very effective, but then you literally will see people push a person out of the community because they hold a view that not everybody holds, that the majority doesn't hold. How is that not also shunning and religiously motivated? I still have a question of, how is that effective? How is that going to change the situation? How is that going to make that person be a better person? If you're a part of the majority group and you think a person has a wrong view or a bigoted view or whatever, how does pushing them out of the group get them to change? Okay, how does that work? And I don't know that it does. So is that considered religious? Do we shun people? Some people still do like spiritual discipline practices, like meditation and things like that, where they clear their head and relax. And some people still do intermittent fasting for other reasons besides religious ones. Do those spiritual disciplines still be considered religious? And another thing that's got me going with this is I've been starting to read Frank Turek's book, and I got through the introduction, and he has a little chart there where he basically defines atheism as religious humanism. Now, my initial emotional reaction is, hell no. Okay, no, that's not what it is at all. But is there something to that? Yeah. So I don't know that we completely get rid of tribalism just because you become an atheist. So I think there's a question to be asked. Are we still, you know, I can't control what theists do in an exchange, but I sure as hell, um, you know, I sure as hell can control what my attitude toward the theist is. That's something that I can do something about. I guess this is where my being a stoic atheist comes out, being following our stoic philosophy, because I really focus on what I can actually do stuff about, and I don't focus on what I can't control. I can't control what a theist attitude is when they come into the comment section, but I can control how I react to it. Um, So it's like, it's not up to me to control the other side of the debate, other than to say, okay, if this person's going to continue to behave this way, I don't have to interact with them and until they change their behavior, but the door is always open. And I think that maybe is the key, I think, to this whole business, is keeping the door open, a crack at least. It's why I won't become a 7.0 atheist. I joke all the time, I'm a 6.969 atheist on Dawkins's scale. One, it's funny. And two, there's a real element of me that will leave the door open for any argument for God that I haven't heard before. And being willing to accept that this is a person that believes certain things. Because I used to be there. People remark about my patience with these people, and it's like, it's because I used to be there. Okay, I know what it's like to be indoctrinated. I know what it's like to be enslaved to a religious system up here. Okay, that I can't see anything else. I know what it's like to be part of a cult. Because we consider Pentecostalism a cult. It's very, they have a lot of cultic behavior. Um, yeah, okay. Uh, I don't know. Being a 6.969 atheist is a lot more fun. Um, so just saying. And it's being, you can only control the side of the interaction that you're on. And the rest of it is going to be up to somebody else's decisions and what they want to do. And so I think it's always possible if both sides have made um, it's, you're not, you don't have to so much try to control the other side as control yourself. Uh, yeah, okay. I get what you're saying, Rimmers. I mean, it really, if because the atheist doesn't have faith, so what they have is their actions, and we have how we act towards others, how we deal with others. Um, where do you want to put the goalposts? And once you set them there, do you move them? Okay. But moving the goalposts is something that theists do a lot, and we decry it. But do we do the same? I put out my standards of evidence because that's the goalpost. Because some of the comments I'm going to deal with later here talk about how the goalpost was set once upon a time for like intelligent design, and they failed. So it's that element. But I don't know. For me, because I'm deconverted, I feel like religion had an influence on how I think about things and how I act, that some of the religious behavior that's taught is still there. I mean, a poor pragmatic example of that I've talked about before is like purity culture. Is my attitude about what I'm open to in a relationship conditioned by my purity culture, or is it a genuine attitude, okay, that I have towards people? Um, because of that conditioning, is that still a holdover, okay, from my religious days? Um, yeah, so it's that's the exchange, okay? How do you interact with that? Agree, Steve. Excellent point. Um, it doesn't require agreement to understand each other's position. Okay, I can empathize and understand another person's position without agreeing with them. Um, if I respect your common humanity, yeah, I agree with that. Very, very good point. I don't have to be a jerk in order to have a dialogue. And I don't know. I've debated this question a lot. A lot of this channel exists to normalize atheism and deconversion. And what I mean by normalization is where I don't automatically get pigeonholed into certain things like not having morality, or I really do believe, I just deny my God and my own righteousness. And the problem I'm running into with that is because it's a religious belief, it's indoctrinated. You can't get out of that. And people ask me, how did I, what did I do about Romans chapter 1 when I was deconverting? The simple question that popped into my brain was, well, maybe Paul's wrong. Is Paul wrong? Okay. It's like, and if he's wrong, what does that do to this Romans being the word of God? Well, it's not the word of God, it's just Paul's opinion. Okay. And once you start asking those kind of questions, but indoctrination doesn't allow you to ask those questions. It always causes you, this is the word of God, so you can't question it, which creates all kinds of problems. Whereas now that I'm deconverted, I can see how people would use that against me as an atheist. I get it. At the same time, I'm trying to be, all kinds of, respectful to the fact of where they're at. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, they do have their Bible verse, treat people like you want to be treated, right? Which I think is a universal humanist idea. It appears in almost every religion in some way, shape, or form. So if they treat you like a jerk, yeah, maybe that's the way they want to be treated. Um, but you bring up another good point about the debate here between the theist-atheist exchange, which is often it's very reactionary, and that people just come in laid past you with some sort of ignorant comment. That's so yeah, welcome, John. But they just kind of come at you, right? And it's very hard to be respectful to somebody who's coming out the gate disrespectful towards you. So there's a lot of human exchange there. But I get it. Having been a theist for so many years and having done, online debatings back when it was the forum days and not, necessarily social media. Um, yeah. So I don't know. It becomes that kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know. I have hope. I guess I'm a hopeless romantic in the sense that I hope that people can have good exchanges and, to me, respecting each other's right to have an opposite opinion and then still coming to good understandings with each other as people, I think should still be possible. And I don't know, social media makes it easy to just look at somebody's profile picture and treat them as an object. They're just an idiot opinion, and I can just treat them like they're nothing. And forgetting that we hope, at least, with AI, this brings up questions, but we hope that there's a human being behind that profile picture and name. And that's the issue. And it's much easier in social media to disrespect people, in my opinion. I don't think that's even debatable anymore. Because back in the day before social media, when I'd sit around the table at high school and debate certain topics, the guy exists across the table who could get up and punch me in the nose. It's, it's like when you have to deal with somebody face to face, it's there's things you will not do when you're face to face with somebody that you will absolutely do on social media. And I've had to change my morality about that as far as exchange, that I won't do to somebody online what I wouldn't do if I was face to face with them. That's kind of a rule I have in, okay, if I was face to face with this person, would I say this or would I do this? I think it's a good rule. And it started to help me out a lot with a lot of this stuff, with the exchange stuff. So I do think it's possible. I hope we can get better at it. I think some of you theists need to grab your presuppositionalist apologetics people that are calling people names by the lapels and go, hey, bro, knock it off. Okay. You're not helping, because you're not. Okay. If you think you're going to act that way and win any person over, you haven't learned how to win people over. And I think the problem I have also with atheists is we do things that we're not getting people to listen to us respectfully because we're being disrespectful. Um, Thanks, Fred. But it's also for me this understanding I can only control my own interactions, and so Do I want to go up to some atheists that are disrespectful to theists and just call them all kinds of names and grab them up? Sure. But can I do that? I don't know. I think you're going to have to look around and find people that are going to be respectful, that have chosen to do this, to choose to be respectful um, in a debate. I think is kind of something that you have to decide on. You can only control your side. Okay, you really of it, and even then, that's sketchy. Okay, because the more I study about human behavior, the more I think that some of our reactions may be biologically conditioned. It's just the way we evolved, and that kind of enters into the discussion from the atheist side. So it's kind of one of those things where you have to really actually look at it. So being open to new data, being open to new things that are good. Yeah, definitely things. Oh, I've got to talk about that now, Martin. Somebody called me an atheist pastor, and boy, do I reject that idea. Um, holy cow. Um, oh, I got to talk about this. What can I say about that? The idea behind a pastor is that I would be the leader of a flock. In other words, I'm the leader, and all the sheep go where I want them to go. And I'm going to tell you that is, first of all, I don't think. Yeah, I agreed. I think there's some conditioning that goes along with that, but being an atheist pastor, the idea of Christianity behind pastor kind of gets in my face on that one, because I don't want that title anymore. Because there's an authority aspect of that. And now, first of all, I don't think it's possible, because being a pastor of atheists would be kind of like herding cats. Um, I think, because atheists tend to be very independently minded. Okay, tend to be. They're not always, but they tend to be. Um, but also, I don't want to be in a position of authority over anybody anymore. I would, I don't want to do that. Okay, I don't want to tell people what to do or what they're supposed to do. I'm offering suggestions here today about theist atheist exchange. I am not giving you dictates. Okay. My job is on this channel is, when I see some theist or some apologist say something stupid about atheism and deconversion, my job is to counter it, to give some balance to the discussion. That's what I'm here for. I'm not, when I do these live streams, it's about facilitating discussion. I have no desire to do that. Yeah. Actually, Paul, I think in America, there is the possibility of being an atheist chaplain. There is secular chaplains that do exist, that don't believe in anything. They tend to be psychologists that couldn't get into the Army or Navy or whatever that way, so they go into chaplaincy and head it that route instead. Usually there are people that deal, I mean, when you think about chaplaincy, it's usually crisis points in a person's life. Somebody died, marriage, baby being born, things like that. So that's kind of where it's at. Also, you need somebody to do marriage. Yeah, there are legal fights about it. Yeah. There's legal fights about whether chaplaincy should exist in the military in the first place, because it seems to be a place where the government is in partnership with religion. Okay, and I would agree with that. There's a lot of atheists that say chaplaincy shouldn't exist. So there's that. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate you. Appreciate that, as always. Well appreciated all the time, every time. Thank you. But yeah. I don't know. I know Aaron Ra has talked to other people and collaborated. I love Aaron. Um, there's a lot of similarities between our channels in this respect, is we both kind of take on some of the same subjects. The difference is he has the authority to kind of zap the creationists, with his ray guns. And I'm more the guy that zaps bad theology and bad apologetics, because I used to be in that. When you have a master's degree in theology, you can talk about theology, um, with some authority, although I would say that theology is nothing more than apologetics to keep people in the pews, more so than apologetics is. It's all about justifying God. I don't, I mean, when you really look at beliefs and you start to try to justify beliefs, that's what theology is. Yeah, that's kind of stuff happens. There's also the other way where people experience the same thing and end up dead. Okay, so was that God too? Okay, yeah. So I mean, it's interesting that people who have, because I'm dealing with this with one of my comments today about experience, and it's like experience doesn't prove anything. um, it doesn't prove a thing even to you, really, because you're interpreting your experience a certain way. So you have to assume that your interpretation is infallible, and you can't do that. Um, so there's that. Let's shift gears a little bit. I think I've beat that dead horse. I want to. Last week, I talked about Isaiah 45:7, where God says that He creates evil. And somebody said, "Oh, you're taking out of context," which tends to be the typical response. So I'm like, well, I think there's another verse where it says God creates everything, and I found it in Colossians 1:16 and 17. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and earth, visible and invisible, with thrones, powers, or rulers, or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. So, does all mean all? Okay. Um, so I have to ask that question. Does all mean all? Um, I would say that that's a problem. Okay, for anybody who wants to say that God isn't responsible for moral evil. Because if I were to, it's definitely something invisible or visible, both. It's on earth. Um, Definitely influences, thrones, powers, rulers, and dominions. Um, uh, I don't know. I don't know how you get past this one and think that God hasn't created moral evil too, because it's created by him and for him. Well, and so that does bring up the moral evil question of who's responsible for it. And ultimately, God, if you have all power, you're all responsible. So, um, I would agree, Stephen, that open theism is probably a good answer to that kind of determinism. The problem with open theism is you don't have the omni God anymore. And I speak as a former open theist. So you end up with a God that's very severely reduced in his abilities in order to get that. So you're basically dumbing down your hero. If it was a comic book character, I'm just dumbing him down. But I don't know how you get past the idea of God creating moral evil with this verse. Okay, because all things is all things. Last I looked, Greek word for all is pas, and pas means all, everything. And so you have to. I can, Fred doesn't have to answer that question. I knew Jesus for 20 years, or quote unquote, knew Jesus. And the Jesus I knew was the one I created in my head. So I can tell you what that is. That's you wanting to believe in something. I know because I used to be there. My testimony of deconversion is long and arduous, but I can tell you the one thing for sure is I wanted to believe it for emotional reasons. So that's kind of, but if God knows that people are going to go to hell and burn forever, why would he create them is a very valid question. Okay. That doesn't seem to indicate an all loving God at that point. So there's that aspect. So I don't know. the more verses I bring about from the Bible that says God created all things, I don't know how you escape the fact that he also created moral evil, that he's responsible for it. So, and what else do we have on the agenda? The U.S. presidential race. Composite polls have Harris ahead 3.1. Still well within the margin of error. I believe that Hillary was ahead by that much in the composite, and she lost. So that's that. They had the VP debate, and I don't know. The conservatives say Vance won, and the liberals say Walz won. So pretty typical stuff. It was a draw then. Let's go do a few comments because this week has been interesting for comments, I guess. The moment I did the first video I did this week was reacting to the Frank Turek disciple about his views on what atheists claim, and then I looking through his claims and what he claims atheists claim, and like no, and no. But that kind of indicates it to me. Yeah, he's definitely Turek's disciple because Turek likes to define what atheism is and then beat it up. So it's very straw mannish. So there's that aspect of it. And a lot of the comments that came from most of my fellow brother and sister atheists were, yeah, this is kind of pretty typical. Yeah, well, here's the thing. There's people that say I have faith in my non-belief in God, and I don't find that to be a very sensible discussion. In fact, I just got that today. Somebody saying yes, you do have faith. You believe there is no God in your world, but you're right because your faith that there is no God. You just disregard solid evidence for an intelligent creator. The problem with intelligent design, and the biggest problem that exists in the United States for intelligent design, is a court case, Kitzmer versus Dover Area School District, in which the Christian judge concluded that intelligent design had no evidence for it that could be used in school, and that it was an opinion and a religious opinion, and he was a Christian. Okay, so if there's evidence for intelligent design, why can't it pass muster in court? Why can't it do that? We put people in jail. We send people to the death penalty. Based on our judicial system, and somehow we can't convict God of being an intelligent designer in court. How come we can't do that? It's sad. And this is 2005. It's like 19 years ago. And it still stands as case law in a lot of cases. It's like there is no good evidence for God. Okay. I every time I turn around, somebody will say, I get that comment, there's plenty of evidence for God. And it's like, have you been listening? You obviously haven't been going through my backlog, because I literally deal with the evidence for God and the evidence against him in several series in this channel. I'll go back and watch them because I've dismissed a lot of that. Yeah, I want to be Santa for that reason, Martin. But that's just it, Mr. Gatsby General there. It makes it an unfalsifiable claim, and an unfalsifiable claim is useless. Okay, you have to make a claim and put it in such a way that it can be falsified. That's science. It's not just a question of putting it in a test tube. You have to put the God hypothesis in such a way that it can be falsified and then test it for falsifiability. You can't do that with a lot of religious claims. They're just claims, and that means they're not evidence. And so why should I go on something that can't be falsified? Okay, if you can have it falsified and somebody tests it and it can't be falsified, then it's true. Okay, it conforms to reality. That's the problem. And so, which God are we talking about with intelligent design also came up. I was glad that somebody answered one of the comments. Yeah, there's plenty of evidence for Thor. I almost commented saying, well, you kind of got the wrong part of the pantheon of the Norse pantheon wrong, because it's Odin who created the world out of an ice giant. And there's as much proof for that as in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. They're both claims about where the origin of the world comes from, and they both have an equal amount of evidence, 0. So that's the problem. Okay. If you're going to prove God, you have to find a way to get him into the test tube. And so far, no dice. Okay. I know very well what Jesus supposedly said in John 14. Okay. I was a pastor for 20 years. I preached the book of John through several times. Okay. That's one thing a lot of theists forget about me is I know your book. I used to be in that book quite a bit. So yeah, but there's no, yeah, but that's it. That's the problem. If you could and prove his existence, you would end atheism. Okay. That's the thing that bothers me most about theists is when they try to reverse the burden of proof on me, they're basically admitting they don't have enough evidence to prove their point. Because if they prove their point, then I wouldn't exist anymore. Okay. That's uh, lives change under Hinduism, lives change under Islam. Malcolm X is a great example of a guy who changed under Islam and became a much more moral person. I mean, change in morality doesn't prove any religion is true. It just means that somebody had an epiphany moment and changed, and it just so happened that religion helped them with that change. Okay, I'm a more moral person and a better person than I was when I was a Christian, and I'm an atheist. Okay, all right. That doesn't prove a damn thing. Okay, change lives, experience doesn't prove a damn thing. It doesn't prove anything because you're assuming that you can transfer your experience, which you can't. And 2, you're assuming that your interpretation of that experience is infallible, that the incredulity of experiential arguments is ever present. Okay, so that's just not possible. It doesn't work. Okay, the argument from experience, that's the reason why when we have eyewitness testimony and experiential testimony in court, it has to be verified because it's shaky. Okay, it's shaky at best. And a lot of people, optical illusions, magician's tricks, prove to us over and over that you can see something and think something is a certain way, but it's not. Okay. So, when I look at what I used to be, okay, I was all those things. I know the book. I know what Jesus supposedly says about himself. The problem I have is when you analyze the gospels, you realize that none of them tell us where they got the story from. Okay. Who wrote those books is purely church tradition, and they never identify themselves. In my series Questionable Witnesses, this is what this is going to be about, is how the gospels do not have any authentication even by biblical standards. If you were to go by the 2 or 3 witnesses standards, everything needs to be established, the gospels fail. Okay. Oh, we have 4 of them. No, because they don't talk about the same things. And it's clear that most of the time they're just copying the original. Okay. So, if a cop copies the testimony of an eyewitness, that doesn't suddenly make the cop another witness. Okay. So that doesn't work for me and never has. Okay. The more people ask how I became an atheist, I went over this, I think a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I don't remember. And it's like studying the Bible. The more you study the Bible, the more you realize how flawed it is. And that is the basis for the Christian faith, is the Bible. Okay. And the events that are supposedly historical in it. Paul said it best: if Jesus isn't risen from the dead, we are of all men most miserable. And he's right. Well, there's a real good bet that the testimony about Jesus rising from the dead is purely made up. Okay. Or they were sincerely mistaken. Okay. As Apologia points out, post-death experiences of people seeing people that are dead is very common. It's like 10% of people that have somebody die in their life see that person after they die. Okay. So it's very possible that that's what happened, and the whole religion comes out of that. That's very possible, very easy for that to be imagined to happen. So it's not I mean, if you want to choose to believe, that's fine. Okay. But I prefer to choose to believe in something that I can verify. and not something I'm just taking on faith, because I don't consider faith to be a virtue anymore. Okay. That's why when somebody tells me that I have faith, okay, it's like, no, I don't. Okay. Um, you're fully welcome to choose your God. Just don't make me choose the morality you want. I want to be stuff that I can verify. And I spent pretty much most of my ministry trying to verify the gospel accounts, because I taught Life of Christ when I was a Christian education pastor. I taught it in every church I did. And every time I was searching for verification of the truth of what was said, and running into two main problems. None of the gospel authors identify themselves. And two, where did they get all the stories? They don't identify that either. So as far as anybody knows, they just straight up made it up, and it's a fictional story, as fictional as Homer. Okay. So, and from my perspective, I work very hard to get people to understand that. But I also, to be honest, you hang around this channel, I'll try to push you off the edge. Okay. I will tell you that you're wasting a lot of your time in your life believing in something that's a fantasy. Okay. Because you want to. You want to believe that. Um, I got a comment this week, if I didn't think there was an afterlife, I would just end it. And I feel sorry for that person. I really do. Because, maybe their life is really rough. I get that. Um, but I have found that I enjoy life much more knowing that there isn't any more after I'm done. Um, just yesterday, I'm playing with my youngest grandson. He's like 15, 16 months. And, he just crawled across, the floor, asked me to pick him up. He's lazy. He could walk, but he doesn't want to. He's the youngest, so everybody carries him around. And he just gets up and he just grabs me around the neck and gives me a hug and kisses me on the cheek, all spontaneous. I didn't ask for it. And that moment means a hell of a lot more to me now, because I know that those moments are never going to come back again. Okay. Not going to get a chance to hug my father in heaven, because the heaven doesn't exist. I don't have any photographs. The one big assumption that a lot of Christians run with is an afterlife. Do you have pictures? Okay. Do you have evidence that an afterlife exists? Oh, near-death experiences. Yeah. And they all reflect whatever belief is already preconditioned into that human mind. And why would you trust a human mind that's going through trauma and wants to believe something is true? I'm sorry, guys, it's experiential, looking past death. You don't have any evidence for any of that. None. Okay. And I would rather go forward thinking there isn't an afterlife, appreciating every bit of life. And, to this person that thinks they have to have an afterlife to believe to have some sort of reason to go on, I think you need some help. Okay. You need to reach out, because there's good reasons to go on all around you. And I've discovered more and more of them since I became an atheist. Okay. My theological beliefs caused me to overlook all that stuff before. Okay. You know, it's what causes you to take things for granted. Oh, I'll have time later, you know, and today, is an anniversary day for me. It is the 30th anniversary of my father's death. I still miss him, but I also know that I'm never going to see him again. And it makes all the memories of him even more precious than they were before. Okay. Because, my last moment with my father was him hugging me before I went back to seminary at the time. And I driving to Kentucky from Michigan, and told me to be careful, gave me a hug, told me he loved me. I told him I loved him. And that moment means a hell of a lot more now that I know that I'm never going to have that moment again. So it's far more than that. Okay. When you realize that this human experience is what you get, then you need to start taking a little responsibility for it. Okay. And what you can control and make it better. You can sit here and decry your circumstances all day long, but it's why I follow Stoic philosophy, because it's like I can't control the circumstances all the time, but I can control my attitude. Yes, but the implications of the choices are catastrophic. Okay, like it's very binary. what the end result of the choice is. And that's the problem. That's why, like, afterlife stories that give multiple options for an afterlife make a hell of a lot more sense to me. Okay, where you're actually judged on what you do in life instead of, I mean, and the Bible is contradictory about that too. Because you got Jesus sitting there saying the rich man ends up in hell because he received good things in life, and the poor man Lazarus ends up in Abraham's bosom because he received crappy things in life. That's the judgment of why they're in those two places. But then you got the Christians coming along and saying, well, it really is about whether you believed in Jesus Christ or not. Okay. And whatever, how much belief is belief, and so you have two contradictory viewpoints on how you get into heaven and hell, even within the Christian scriptures, one coming from Jesus Christ himself. So, and the other one coming from some understanding of Paul and the rest of the gospel. So which is it? So, I mean, you can hope in that. I would rather work on life in the now than believe in that stuff. So which one is it? So I don't know. When I look at the comments, a lot of this is, I think this Frank Turek book thing is going to be fun though, for me, because I've already got the theists coming out of the woodwork telling me that I actually have faith, and that's great. Um, and so a lot of people are excited about that one. I know a lot of people have tried to go through, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. And some of them have made it and some of them not. I don't delete all your comments, Azo. I don't delete. That's the funny thing, Azo. I get accused that you deleted my comment. I was like, I don't even know your comment existed half the time. It's the thing about it is, here's the thing, Theist. I wouldn't delete your comment because sometimes I look at it and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to leave this up because this is a great example of the silliness that I'm talking about. That much, Turek. You need to remember that this book, okay, this book isn't just written by Turek. Okay, it's Geisler too. And it brings up the question for me, which parts of it are written by Geisler and which ones are written by Turek? Yeah. I'm not, I don't know what I'm going to do with this series, but I do know that I want Friday to have options for me. So whatever I'm feeling like doing, that's what I'm going to do. And right now it's Frank Turek. So, it's that kind of thing. It's like I got to have some interest in it to do it. So, yeah, maybe it's ghostwritten. I don't know. See, I've always been skeptical of co-authored books because they don't tell you who wrote what. Okay, it's like, who am I talking to here? Because sometimes you'll see a co-authored book where you'll see the chapters kind of contradict each other a little bit, and you're like, oh, one of those written by one of them, and one of them's written by the other, and they just kept it in to let people know there's a difference of opinion. Yeah, thank goodness for hospitals and ambulances, huh? So I don't know. When I'm looking at people who make this claim that I have faith as an atheist, it's the title of the book's always bothered me, and I've never read it. And I'm now starting to read it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, there's probably a good reason why I haven't read this. Because I'm not getting too far past the introduction, and I already got it. So I don't know. There's just this contradiction of, no, I know what atheism is because I am one, and I've studied it. And then I've got this theist over here telling me what it is, and they're wrong. Okay. And it's just too much what this channel is about, which is counting against that. Okay. Don't mischaracterize me. Don't deal with this to me. So there's that. That's it. That's it. So I don't know. I think it's going to be fun. I'm probably going to give you the first episode about the introduction next week. That kind of goes into what's up on deck. There's a video. I think TMM made me aware of this. This guy gives 25 questions to atheists. So or things that are supposed to cause atheists to tremble or whatever. Lucifer's 25 or whatever. And I thought, well, that'll be fun. I haven't even. Okay, general, it's not personal. Okay, it's for me. I wasted a lot of my time, money, and energy believing in Christianity, and I now know that it's absolutely a con. So, as somebody who sees something as a con and wants to help people out of the con, that's what I do. Okay, but I also don't like it when atheists like Turek and others, the guy I reacted to this week, who is a Turek disciple, misrepresent what atheism is because of their belief system. If you're a Christian, you have to believe Romans chapter 1, 18 through 23, and that I, as an atheist, am really not an atheist. I get that that's where this is coming from. This is also why I know that the Bible isn't the word of God, because that is straight up, flat out wrong, because I know what's in my head, and I know what Paul says is in my head, and they are not in agreement. Paul is wrong. That's his opinion. So there's that. So, when I look at that, that's what I do. So, this video this week of, oh, these 25 things are going to cause atheists to tremble. I'm like, yeah, I'm not looking forward to trembling. And then you got the other, the normal stuff. Bible study is going to go this week. I'm going to talk about what the Bible says about witches and witchcraft. That ought to be fun. I don't know. We might have a special guest for that one. Halloween always brings out the actor in me, so that might happen quite a bit on that series as we go through that. Questionable witnesses. I'm going to be dealing with John's introduction, and that'll be fun. And then end of the week, I think I'm going to hit Turek's introduction and talk about that. I don't know how much of the introduction I'll cover. I want to reiterate, I don't want to be like the one person that took 2-3 years to go through Turek's book. At the same time, I want to be thorough and I don't want to rush it. So I'm trying to find the right pace. So hopefully I'll find that and we can finish that in a relative short amount of time. But most of the time when I read apologist books, it takes me back to when I was an apologist and making those same arguments. So there's that. But, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I see a lot of the comments talking about people, getting sick, and all of a sudden, God steps in. I would argue that every time I hear a God story, I also notice doctors, ambulances, and hospitals who are probably really doing the ones really helping. Once I get to a certain level of irritations, I have to stop an episode, Martin. That's actually a pretty good, I don't know. I think I'm going to go through it. And then when I get to a point where I'm extremely irritated, it's time to move on to the next episode and wait a week or two. I don't know. That'll be fun. My problem with Turek, everything I've ever dealt with Turek with, even when I was a Christian, was all the assumptions and all the times he tries to win the argument by definition. That's part of it. So that's kind of the issue. That's the issue with Turek, as I already have previous experience doing his videos. And, I've said it before. Turek used to debate the big boys, and now he zips off to colleges and deals with college kids. And there's a reason for that. There's also, I think the problem is, I think a lot of Christians also think Turek is like not the best, but others think he's great. I don't know. I don't know. I just part of this is also I'm going to eventually on Fridays react to some preachers that I think are nonsensical and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to have that. Right now in my life, I usually try to give a little testimony what's going on in my life as far as deconversion. I've kind of reached a crossroads personally, so I'm trying to figure that out, which is why I'm off next week from my job. I'm taking a vacation week, so I have 9 nights off in a row. And part of that is rearranging my apartment, and part of it is trying to come to terms with where I'm going from here. Yeah, the Rabyd Atheist is also named Ed Raby. That's where the Rabyd comes from. It's a play on my last name. As Prophet of Zod so eloquently put it, he's not really all that rabid. He's actually kind of chill. So I almost think I want to put that on one of my cups whenever I get Merc. I may have to ask Prophet for permission to do that. I'm sure he'd give it, but you know, that's the thing with a lot of apologists, though, Paul, is they want to put God outside of time and space where he can't be falsified, and that keeps him safe. I think it's the whole presuppositionalist idea behind all of apologetics is that there's certain aspects to God you can't ever attack, and so therefore he sticks around. But I have to ask which creator God are we dealing with? I try to tell people intelligent design only gets you so far, but I don't know. I think that's kind of it for me. A lot of discussion tonight. I may go back and look at, and that might be the basis for next week's question. We'll see. you know, the thing is, Rimmers, with faith healers and with apologists, have you noticed that it's all in the family? I mean, William Lane Craig's last video I saw people reacting to a lot. He's up there with his kid. You know, Sean McDowell appears with his kid. It's all in the family. Okay. And I think faith healing is the same. It's interesting in Pentecostalism how the same family has the same shtick over the years. So that might be a good question to ask next week. Maybe we'll talk about faith healing and whether divine healing even exists. We can play that game. As a former Pentecostal, that's something I actually have experience with. So, well, yeah, but there's multiple options, General. Multiple. I think there's plenty of evidence for the existence of Odin. There's just as much evidence for the existence of Odin as that one. So there you go. But I think I'm going to call it good. I don't know. I think it's an end point. So thank everybody for stopping by. Appreciate all of you. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things that you guys do to make this go a little bit better. Channel's starting to recover a little bit from my week off. So it's starting to get back to where it's getting noticed again and things like that. So thank you everybody for doing the things that you do. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over and there's no afterlife. So you want to take all your time, money, and opportunities and give them to yourself, the people you love and care for, to make this a better world. Don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith, because that is a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, thanks for stopping by, guys, and I will catch you next time.